I'm Ahmad, and my earliest memories are intertwined with the principles of Islam. Raised in a deeply religious family, faith was not merely an aspect of our lives, it was the cornerstone. Each day I knelt in prayer 5 times, my voice echoing the sacred words of the Quran with profound respect. The mosque was a haven for me, a place I turned to for tranquility and direction. I cherished my devoutness, convinced that my commitment to Allah and the tenets of Islam would guide me to everlasting peace. The Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad molded my worldview. I delved into the hadiths, committed important surahs to memory, and pursued the wisdom of Islamic scholars to navigate the complexities of life. My life had a certain rhythm, a clear purpose fueled by my adherence to the straight path outlined in the Quran. However, despite my steadfast faith, there were moments of uncertainty that crept in during the quiet of the night. I would find myself awake, pondering the essence of God and the concept of salvation. The Quran mentions that our deeds will be weighed on the day of judgment, but I often worried if I had done enough. What if, despite my devout efforts, my sins tipped the scales against my good deeds? These doubts were transient, quickly suppressed by prayer and study, yet they persisted subtly in my thoughts, like a faint shadow. I had always held a deep respect for other religions. As a theology student, I was intrigued by different faiths, especially Christianity, though I saw flaws in its doctrines. The notion that Jesus was the Son of God struck me as illogical, respectable and revered, yes, but merely human like all other prophets. The concept of the Trinity baffled me, and the idea of attaining salvation solely through grace seemed to bypass the vital roles of effort and accountability. For years, this belief underpinned my spirited debates with Christians, where I confidently used the Quran to challenge what I perceived as inconsistencies in the Bible. My faith appeared rock solid, bolstered by my ability to argue for Islam with clarity and reason. Despite this outward confidence, those quiet doubts lingered. Everything changed during a visit to see my family in another city. The day began as usual. I rose early for Fajr prayer, offered my daily supplications, and engaged in a morning of theological discussion with my younger brother. As the day progressed, I started to feel a slight discomfort in my chest, which I initially brushed off as trivial. By evening, however, the discomfort had escalated into a sharp, stabbing pain that hindered my breathing. "Ahmad, we're going to the hospital," my brother insisted, reaching for his keys. I resisted, as was typical for me with health concerns, asserting, "It's probably just indigestion, I'll be fine." Nevertheless, the pain persisted. Upon our arrival at the emergency room, I was barely able to stand. The medical staff swiftly examined me and conducted tests, their expressions growing increasingly grave. Within an hour, I found myself on a hospital bed, surrounded by machines, as they informed me I was suffering a severe heart attack. As I absorbed their diagnosis, confusion and disbelief swirled in my mind. A heart attack at my age seemed unfathomable. I had been diligent about my health, eating properly, exercising, and maintaining my spiritual routines. Why was this happening to me? Amidst the flurry of medical activity to stabilize my condition, a profound fear seized me, deeper than anything I'd ever felt. Thoughts of my family, my unfinished life, and the prayers I hadn't yet said flooded my mind. Was this the end? Was I about to face my Creator, unready and filled with doubt? The room around me started to blur, the voices of the doctors fading away. My chest tightened painfully with each breath. Closing my eyes, I began to recite the Shahada repeatedly, clinging to my faith. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. Then darkness enveloped me, and for a brief moment all was silent. No pain, no sound, just an eerie stillness. In that profound silence, a deep realization washed over me. This was not my end. It felt as though something, or someone, was waiting beyond. Suddenly the darkness shifted, and my entire existence seemed to fade, leaving only a sense of impending change, as if I stood on the brink of an immense, unexplored journey. Though uncertain of what lay ahead, I was sure of one thing: my life was on the cusp of a transformation. When I thought I opened my eyes, I realized I was no longer in my body. It was an odd sensation, akin to floating, yet devoid of any weight. I gazed down to see my own form on the hospital bed below, encircled by doctors and nurses working feverishly. My breathing was shallow. The monitors attached to me beeped in disarray. Nearby, my brother stood, his face ashen with concern, his hands clenched around a chair, his knuckles white with tension. Panic was absent from my feelings. Instead, there was a surreal calmness, as though I was observing a scene from a film. I attempted to speak, to reassure my brother that I was still present, but no voice emerged. In fact, I wasn't even sure I had a mouth in this state. The pain was gone, but so was any tangible connection to my previous existence. I felt detached, as if I were tethered to an alternate reality, merely an observer, unable to engage with the world around me. What is happening? I pondered, my mind whirling. Am I dead? The notion sent a shiver through me. My faith had prepared me for a judgment of the soul, a weighing of deeds, a determination of fate. Yet this experience bore no resemblance to those teachings. There were no angels, no scenes of celestial judgment, just my spirit, seemingly adrift, suspended above my physical body, navigating a mix of confusion and a profound, unsettling tranquility. Then I saw it, a light unlike any other. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but possessed an intense radiance that seemed to pierce right through me. It pulsed gently, brightening progressively, almost as if it were alive. This light didn't originate from within the hospital room. It beckoned from beyond, distant yet palpably near. I felt its pull instantly, an undeniable allure that seemed to delve into the very essence of my current existence. I paused, torn over my next move. Every instinct urged me to cling to the familiar reality I knew, yet the light's magnetism was overwhelming. It was more than a mere visual spectacle. It felt like a presence, calling to me not through words but through a profound sensation that defied explanation. As it grew, the hospital room around me began to diminish. The beeping monitors, the urgent voices of medical staff, even the image of my worried brother, all started to fade, giving way to an immense enveloping brightness. As I was drawn through a tunnel-like space, the light became increasingly near. Initially I resisted, but I soon recognized the futility of my efforts. The pull wasn't harsh or forceful. It was gentle, yet irresistibly compelling. Moving closer to the light, a new sensation enveloped me, a warmth unlike any other. It wasn't just physical warmth like that from the sun, but a profound, soul-deep warmth that filled every fiber of my being. It was comforting, yet there was a powerful undercurrent that left me in awe. The light was not merely to be seen, it was to be experienced, vibrant and alive. What is this? I questioned myself, though in the presence of such a phenomenon, the question seemed trivial. Where am I going? Despite the awe-inspiring experience, a part of me was gripped by fear of the unknown. Throughout my life, my beliefs had been anchored in the teachings of the Quran and the tenets of Islam. This experience, this light, did not align with any scripture I knew. It did not fit into any theological framework I had learned about what follows death. And this deviation from expectation filled me with trepidation. Yet there was also a part of me that couldn't resist the allure of the light. It wasn't merely calling, it was beckoning, inviting me into its embrace. Deep within, I recognized that this was far from ordinary. It was a divine encounter, poised to dismantle all that I had previously understood. As I drew nearer, the warmth intensified, and the light enveloped me completely. For the first time, I experienced a peace that transcended anything I had ever felt, even in my most profound moments of prayer or meditation. It was a complete serenity, as if all my worries, doubts, and fears were being peeled away. Despite the tranquility, I sensed that something momentous was on the horizon. This was more than a mere experience. It was a pivotal moment, a threshold in my existence. The light was not just a destination, it was a gateway, and I stood at its precipice. I hesitated, feeling at once unworthy and unprepared. What lay beyond this brilliant threshold? What awaited me on the other side? Yet the light seemed to respond to my silent inquiries, offering reassurance without words. Taking what felt like a deep breath, I stepped forward into the light, and in that moment, I understood that my life was on the brink of profound transformation. As I fully immersed myself in the light, my surroundings underwent a complete metamorphosis. The warmth that had previously touched me now enveloped me entirely, instilling a profound peace that was both overwhelming and deeply humbling. The light itself transformed. It wasn't merely bright, but seemed to pulse with life and vibrant energy, resonating with immense power. I felt as though I was in the presence of something far greater than myself, something utterly beyond human understanding. Then, amidst this brilliance, a figure emerged. Initially, it was hard to discern exactly what I was seeing. The figure radiated a presence so potent and majestic that I was instantly filled with an awe so deep it was almost physical. As the figure drew nearer, I experienced waves of love and compassion flowing towards me. This wasn't just an emotional feeling. It felt as if the very essence of love was emanating from this being, enveloping and permeating my entire being. Who are you?" I stammered, feeling the triviality of my words in such a monumental moment. He looked at me, his eyes piercing deep into my core, into my heart, my soul, and every concealed aspect of my existence. His gaze was not judgmental but profoundly understanding, as if he knew everything about me and yet held me in complete love. "I am Jesus," he replied. The word struck me like a thunderbolt. Jesus. My thoughts spiraled, struggling to comprehend the unfolding reality. As a Muslim, I had recognized Jesus strictly as a prophet, an esteemed one at that, but never more. The concept of him as the Son of God was an idea I had firmly rejected and debated vigorously. Yet now he stood before me, tangible and more authentic than any encounter I had ever known. "That's not possible," I murmured, speaking more to myself than to him. "You're just a prophet. How can this be?" Jesus' smile radiated patience and kindness. "Ahmed, you're filled with questions," he remarked, "and I'm here to assist you in discovering the answers." As I prepared to voice my thoughts, to debate and understand, the environment around us transformed. The light shifted, unveiling scenes vibrant and lively, transporting me across time and place. The initial scene was one I recognized, depictions from the Quran of Jesus performing miracles. I watched as he healed the sick, restored sight to the blind, and even raised the dead. These were miracles I had always acknowledged as truth, yet witnessing them firsthand infused them with an undeniable depth. The compassion in his touch, the authority in his voice, were far beyond anything I had envisioned. Then the scenes shifted, showing me narratives not from the Quran, but from the Bible, stories I had previously rejected. I saw Jesus at the Last Supper, his love for his disciples surpassing human comprehension. I saw his deep anguish in the garden as he braced for his sacrifice, And then the crucifixion unfolded before me. Despite my desire to turn away, I couldn't. I saw the nails, the crown of thorns, the profound agony on his face. Yet even amidst this suffering, there was something more. A resolute strength, a clear purpose. This was not merely suffering, it was an act of love on an unimaginable scale. Why? My voice shook as I spoke. Why would you go through with this? It was for you, he replied quietly. For everyone. His words struck me deeply. I had always believed that salvation was something you had to work for, to gain through good deeds. The concept that someone would willingly bear the weight of humanity's sins, sacrificing himself out of love, overwhelmed me. The visions shifted once more, and I was presented with texts from the Quran and the Bible aligned together. Jesus gestured towards prophecies in the Quran that I had read over and over, yet never fully grasped, verses foretelling the Messiah, promises of salvation, a beacon for all nations. He then guided me to their realizations in the Bible, demonstrating how each prophecy culminated in him. How did I not realize this before? I wondered aloud, feeling a heavy sense of awakening. How did I overlook the truth? You were seeking, Jesus replied softly, and now you've found it. Tears rolled down my cheeks as the impact of his words hit me. All that I had held true, all that I had depended on, was being upended. Yet amidst this turmoil, there emerged a peculiar clarity, like the pieces of a lifelong, intricate puzzle suddenly clicking together. There's more to see, Jesus said, looking at me with deep empathy. Will you join me? I nodded. My mind whirled, unsure of the future, but certain of one thing: my life was forever changed. As Jesus reached out his hand, the scenery transformed again. The light around us grew, enveloping everything in its embrace, and I felt an extraordinary lightness, as if I were floating into another dimension. Fear was absent. I trusted him, even though I didn't fully grasp what was unfolding or why. What I saw next took my breath away. It was a realm saturated with colors that surpassed anything I had ever seen. The atmosphere vibrated with peace, joy, and unity. There was no pain, no grief, no tears, just pure, boundless love. In the distance, I observed people of all walks of life, their faces radiating happiness from within. They moved with ease, their laughter and embraces suggesting a profound fulfillment. "This is heaven," Jesus explained, his tone warm and inviting. "This is what unity with God looks like." I was nearly speechless. The sheer splendor overwhelmed me. "It's perfect," I finally whispered. "This is what I've hoped for, isn't it?" Jesus nodded. "It represents the realization of God's promise. Yet it isn't something you earn solely through actions, it's a gift bestowed freely through faith." His words hit me powerfully. In my own beliefs, everything hinged on equilibrium, good acts surpassing the bad, precise timing of prayers, meticulously observed fasts. But now, Jesus was showing me that salvation wasn't about accumulating merit, it was about receiving grace. "Grace?" I queried, my voice quivering with both perplexity and newfound hope. "What do you mean?" "Perfection cannot be earned. No one can live entirely without sin, no matter how hard they try. God's love isn't something you earn, it's something you accept. That's why I sacrificed my life for you, for everyone, so that through me you might find freedom." His statement challenged every belief I had held. My entire life was dedicated to striving, to doing enough to appear worthy before God. But here, in this realm of absolute peace, I was learning it wasn't about worthiness, it was about trusting in Him. As I grappled with these revelations, the scene abruptly changed. The comforting warmth and light vanished, replaced by a chilling, oppressive darkness. I felt its impact instantly, a weight pressing on my chest. The air grew dense and suffocating, and from afar I could hear faint cries, full of anguish, desperation, and hopelessness. "This is hell," Jesus spoke, his voice filled with sorrow. "This is what it means to be apart from God." I didn't want to look, but the vision sharpened. Shadowy figures moved in the darkness, their faces twisted in pain and remorse. They reached out, desperately seeking something, someone, but found no response. The sheer despair overwhelmed me, cutting deep into my soul. "Why?" I murmured, the sound scarcely escaping my lips. "Why must they endure such pain? They chose to part ways." Jesus responded, his tone laden with grief. "God's love is accessible to all, yet not all embrace it. Hell isn't about God's anger. It's about the lack of his presence. It's simply the consequence of denying the gift of salvation." I was transfixed. The agony, the void, it was more horrific than anything I could have ever envisioned. Yet, even within that bleakness, a profound sense of love emanated from Jesus, as if he grieved for each soul that had turned aside. "Do you see now, Ahmed?" he questioned, locking eyes with me. "The decisions you make in life are significant, not for what they earn you, but for the relationship you seek with God." Tears flowed down my cheeks as his words deeply resonated with me. Throughout my life, I had endeavored to be virtuous, engaging in prayer, fasting, and striving. Yet now, in Jesus' presence, I understood that what he truly desired was my heart. "Ahmed," he spoke gently yet resolutely, "will you take my gift? Will you let me guide you to the Father?" I paused, not from doubt, but overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. All that I had believed and lived for was now under scrutiny. Yet, deep within, the truth was clear, resonating through my being. "Yes," I finally uttered, my voice cracking. "I trust you." The light surrounding us intensified, becoming warmer, and I was enveloped by a peace unlike any before. It was more than peace, it was liberation from fear, from the constant striving, from the heavy load of trying to merit what could only be received. "There is still work for you," Jesus spoke, his voice imbued with intention. "You must go back and tell others of what you've witnessed." "Go back?" I questioned, taken aback. "But I wish to remain. I want to stay with you." He offered a smile that was both reassuring and provocative. "Your journey here isn't complete. There are people who need your testimony, Ahmed. They must learn the truth." The light shifted once more, and I felt a tug as if I was being pulled back to the world I had departed. I was reluctant to leave, but I understood my mission. Jesus had bestowed upon me a purpose that I could not forsake. As the visions of heaven and hell receded, his last words resonated within me. "Go, Ahmed, spread the truth. I will always be with you." When I opened my eyes, the stark fluorescent lights of the hospital room supplanted the divine brilliance I had just experienced. Pain seared through my chest, and the beeping of machines filled the space. The clean, sharp smell of antiseptic overwhelmed me, and I realized I had returned to my body, to the world I thought I had left for good. Surrounding voices buzzed, a mixture of urgency and relief. "He's back!" one of the doctors shouted. I blinked, my vision foggy, attempting to discern the shapes bustling around me. Slowly, my brother's face came into focus, his eyes brimming with a blend of astonishment and happiness. "Ahmed, can you hear me?" he inquired, his voice quivering. I managed a weak nod, yet words failed me. My thoughts were a whirlwind, struggling to merge the profound encounter I had just experienced with the stark reality now before me. I had stood in the presence of Jesus. I had glimpsed heaven and hell. Now, here I was, confined to a hospital bed, encircled by people who had no way of grasping what I had just endured. The doctors conversed rapidly, amazed at how my health had abruptly normalized. "It's a miracle," one remarked, his head shaking in disbelief. "We thought he was gone." My brother clasped my hand firmly, tears cascading down his cheeks. "Alhamdulillah," he murmured. "You're alive." Alive. The word seemed weighty, almost alien. Just moments before, or so it appeared, I had stood in a domain transcending anything imaginable on earth. I had beheld Jesus' visage, heard his voice, felt his love, and heeded his summons. Now here I was again, in a body that felt unfamiliar, in a world that now felt incredibly constricted. In the initial hours, I scarcely spoke. My family remained at my bedside, their relief manifest in every look and gesture. Yet internally, I grappled with a tempest of emotions. What was this profound experience I had undergone? How could I align it with the beliefs I had held all my life? Jesus was not merely a prophet, that much had become clear. He was far more. But what did that imply for me, for my faith, for my family, and for my community? The enormity of these revelations was overwhelming. Late into the night, as the hospital hushed and my family had returned home to rest, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, recalling every detail of that divine encounter, the brilliance, the love, the visions of heaven and hell, and the words of Jesus. Each aspect was vivid and incontrovertible. Yet the fear lingered. If I shared this, what would ensue? My family had always been devout, taking pride in our heritage and beliefs. How could I convey to them that everything we believed might not encompass the entire truth? I shut my eyes, seeking sleep, but instead Jesus' image appeared again, his face kind, loving and patient. His words reverberated through my mind. "Go, Ahmed, share the truth. I will be with you always." This notion was both reassuring and daunting. In the days that followed, while my physical strength gradually returned, my mind was in turmoil. I couldn't dismiss what I had seen, yet I found myself unable to speak of it. Not just yet. I sought answers, clarity, something to make sense of everything. One quiet afternoon, alone at last, I picked up my phone and started searching. Unsure of where to begin, I eventually found myself delving into texts about Jesus in ways I never had before. I explored his teachings, his miracles, his sacrifice. I discovered the concept of grace, once so alien to me, but now seeming like a beacon. Then, for the first time, I hesitantly opened a Bible. The act felt odd, almost taboo, yet as I read, I was unable to stop. The words seemed to leap off the pages, echoing the truth of my recent experiences. It was as if the book was alive, speaking directly to my heart. The more I read, the more everything began to align. Passages from the Quran that had once puzzled me now clicked into place. Prophecies I had misunderstood or overlooked suddenly became transparent. However, with each new insight, the burden of my responsibility intensified. I couldn't keep this knowledge to myself indefinitely. I was compelled to share the truth, but the thought was terrifying. How would my family respond? My community? My entire identity had been anchored in my devout Muslim upbringing. What would they think if I told them I had met Jesus and recognized him as the Son of God? The prospect was fraught with fear, yet driven by a newfound conviction. I knew I couldn't evade the call forever. On a restless night in my bed, the weight of my troubles overwhelmed me. I realized I couldn't shoulder this burden by myself. I needed someone to confide in, someone trustworthy and empathetic. My mind immediately pictured my brother. We shared a deep bond, and although he might find my story hard to believe, his love meant he would at least hear me out. With a heavy sigh, I reached for my phone and dialed his number. His voice carried a note of worry as he picked up. "Ahmed, is everything all right?" "No," I confessed, my voice trembling. "There's something I have to share with you, something that happened during my absence." There was a brief silence on the line. "All right," he responded, his tone tinged with caution. "Tell me." As I braced myself to reveal my secret, a surge of fear gripped me. However, recalling the comforting words of Jesus, "I will be with you always," gave me courage. I realized then that I was not truly alone. This was merely the start. On the night I decided to open up about my experience, it felt like venturing into a tempest, uncertain if I'd come out the other side unharmed. I began with someone I could fully trust, my lifelong confidant, Hassan. He was always the one who could hear my deepest concerns without judgment. If there was anyone who could understand, or at least lend an ear, it would be him. Sitting across from Hassan over a warm cup of tea, I started with a tremble in my voice. "Hassan, there's something I need to share. It's different this time. It's about what I went through in the hospital." His brow furrowed, worry evident in his eyes. "Are you talking about the time we nearly thought we lost you?" I simply nodded. "Yes, but it wasn't just a blackout, Hassan. I went somewhere else. I saw things, met someone." His look turned grave, and he leaned in closer. "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath and poured out my story, the out-of-body journey, the radiant light, my encounter with Jesus, and the vivid glimpses of both heaven and hell. I described how Jesus spoke to me about grace and redemption, and how he called me to follow him. After I finished, silence enveloped us. Hassan stared, his expression a mix of astonishment, skepticism, and an emotion I couldn't quite place. Finally he spoke, his voice low and steady. "Ahmed, you've always been a seeker of faith and truth, but this is a lot to take in. Are you certain it wasn't just a dream? The mind can play elaborate tricks when we're in extreme conditions." "I've considered that," I acknowledged, "but this was no dream, Hassan. It felt more vivid than any reality I've ever known. I sensed his presence, I witnessed heaven, I glimpsed hell, and I am certain what he conveyed to me holds truth." He averted his gaze, clearly struggling with my revelation. "So, you're suggesting that everything we've upheld, everything we've practiced, doesn't encompass the entire truth?" he questioned. "Not exactly," I responded softly. "What I'm saying is that the truth is more expansive than we realized. Jesus isn't merely a prophet, he is the Messiah. He is the path to God." Hassan shook his head, his skepticism plain. "Ahmed, this could destroy you. If you share this with others, you're aware of the backlash." "I'm aware," I replied, my tone firm. "Yet, I cannot conceal this. I've been shown the truth, Hassan. How could I possibly remain silent?" He remained silent, torn. Part of him seemed inclined to dismiss my words as a figment of illness or fantasy. Yet, another part, the part that knew me intimately, was attentive, pondering, and perhaps even starting to doubt. In the days that followed, I cautiously shared my encounter with a select few, individuals whose judgments I valued and who understood my spirit. Like Hassan, many met my words with skepticism tinged with concern. Some outright dismissed my claims, unable to fathom that I could have truly met Jesus. Yet, there were those who listened with genuine openness, their curiosity piqued by my extraordinary experience. Among them was an elder from our community, a man revered for his wisdom and kindness. As I unfolded my story, he listened without interruption, without skepticism. After I finished, he spoke thoughtfully. "Ahmed, truth has a remarkable way of reaching us, even when we aren't seeking it. Perhaps this is how God is unveiling a new path for you. His words bolstered my resolve. The notion that even one person could perceive the earnestness in my declaration gave me hope that perhaps others might as well. I felt compelled to continue this journey. Jesus had instructed me to spread the truth, and I was increasingly convinced that I needed to do so openly, regardless of the repercussions. It was not about me, it was about Him and the message He had entrusted to me. Thus, one evening, I found myself before a modest assembly of people, my family, friends, and some intrigued onlookers. As I began to address the gathering, my heart throbbed against my chest, yet I sensed a reassuring presence, as if Jesus Himself was standing by my side. "I understand this may be difficult for many of you to accept," I began, my voice faltering yet resolute. "But I must share with you what I experienced. At the edge of death, I met Jesus. He revealed to me the truths of God, of heaven and hell, and of grace. He has called upon me to convey this to you all." The atmosphere was thick with silence as my words settled over the crowd. Reactions varied widely, from shock and bewilderment to curiosity and even resentment. Yet I continued, unwavering, detailing every aspect of my journey, every divine insight I had been granted. As I concluded, the room split. Some left briskly, their expressions hardened, while others lingered, their faces etched with introspection, grappling with the implications of my words. A few came forward, their eyes alight with questions. "Do you really believe all this?" one man asked, skepticism lacing his voice, though he seemed open to listening. "It's more than belief," I responded. "I know it to be true, and I encourage you to seek out this truth for yourself." As days turned into weeks, I found myself navigating the delicate balance between the teachings of my Islamic heritage and my newfound faith in Jesus. I spoke of common virtues like love, compassion, and unwavering devotion to God. I pointed out how prophecies within the Quran hinted at Jesus's pivotal role and how his teachings fulfilled God's promises. My intention was never to dismantle anyone's faith, but to gently usher them toward considering a broader, perhaps more profound, spiritual perspective. The more I shared my experiences, the more I noticed the impact they had on others. Some were inspired to read the Bible for the very first time, while others began to reconsider their long-held views. Throughout this journey, I sensed Jesus' presence, guiding my words and bolstering my resolve. I realized, however, that my work was far from finished. There were still more individuals to connect with and more obstacles to overcome. As I braced myself for the next phase, I sought strength in prayer, aware that sharing my story could lead to inspiration as well as face rejection and loss. Deep down, one thing was crystal clear. I was not on this path alone. Jesus was with me, fulfilling his promise, and that assurance was all I needed to press on. As I embraced my new life with Jesus, a profound peace enveloped me, unlike anything I had experienced before. Previously, my faith had revolved around striving, praying correctly, fasting appropriately, trying to accumulate enough righteousness. But now, I realized it wasn't about my efforts. It was about what Jesus had accomplished. Choosing to accept him as my Savior was challenging but incredibly liberating. For the first time, I felt whole. The burden of my doubts and fears had been lifted, replaced with the assurance that God's love was not something I needed to earn. It was freely given. The path ahead was both wonderful and difficult. I understood my story could inspire as well as distance people. I began to speak publicly, sharing my encounters with anyone who would listen. I recounted my transformative meeting with Jesus, the visions of heaven and hell, and the profound message of grace that had reshaped my life. Initially, reactions varied. Some listeners were intrigued, posing insightful questions about how my experiences aligned with the teachings of both the Quran and the Bible. Others were skeptical, accusing me of delusion or of forsaking my original faith. The most painful responses came from my family. When I shared my journey with my parents, they were initially stunned. "Ahmed, how could you say such things?" My father's voice wavered, tinged with both anger and sorrow. "We raised you to respect our faith, to follow the teachings of Islam, and now you claim all that we have believed in is insufficient." "It's not about dismissing our beliefs," I responded softly. "It's about seeing them completed. Jesus is more than a prophet. He is the path to God. He revealed this to me personally." Tears welled up in my mother's eyes, and I could see her internal conflict. She was trying to grasp my words, yet it was hard for her to align them with the faith she had cherished her entire life. My siblings were split. Some outright rejected my account, while others showed a quiet curiosity but hesitated to express it. Those moments were among the toughest I have ever encountered. The fear of losing my family was palpable, but so was my duty to convey the truth. I prayed fervently for my family's understanding and openness to the message of Jesus. Despite facing rejection, I drew comfort and strength from a new spiritual community. A local church embraced me wholeheartedly, their support and warmth helping me to overcome the hurdles of this new journey. They didn't view me as someone who had abandoned one faith for another. Rather, they welcomed me as a brother in Christ, embraced by grace. During those initial days, I also connected with individuals who had similar experiences: ex-Muslims, Christians from Muslim backgrounds, and people from diverse backgrounds who had encountered Jesus in significant ways. Their stories bolstered my spirit, affirming that I was not alone in this transformation. As I persisted in sharing my testimony, I witnessed its impact on others. Those who had previously been apathetic towards faith began to inquire. Some who had staunchly held their beliefs started to entertain the idea that Jesus might be more than just a prophet. Like me, some took the bold step to embrace him as their savior. One of the most poignant moments occurred when my younger brother, who had initially brushed aside my experiences, approached me one night. "Ahmed," he spoke softly, "I've been reflecting on what you shared about Jesus and grace. I'm not sure I believe it yet, but I want to explore more." Tears welled up in my eyes as I embraced him. "That's all I ask," I replied. "Pursue the truth. Jesus will meet you along the way." As my path unfolded, I leveraged my distinct background to foster connections between Islam and Christianity. I discussed the shared principles of love, devotion, and the quest for truth. I pointed out the prophecies and teachings within the Quran that referred to Jesus as the Messiah, illustrating the interconnections between the two faiths that many had overlooked. Yet I also emphasized that the message of Jesus transcended religious boundaries. It centered on a personal relationship with God, enabled by his sacrifice. It was about experiencing grace, forgiveness, and a love deeper than anything I had previously understood. Reflecting on my past, I realize how God orchestrated every aspect of my life, my upbringing, my doubts, and even my challenges, to equip me for this mission. The path has not been without its trials, but the rewards have been immeasurable. Every rejection, every challenging conversation, every flicker of doubt has been eclipsed by the immense joy of witnessing lives transformed by the truth of Jesus. As I conclude this chapter of my story, I leave you with this encouragement. Seeking the truth requires bravery. It demands questioning what you've always known, venturing into the unknown, and trusting that God will lead you. I assure you the journey is profoundly rewarding. If my story has touched you, if you feel a spark within, I urge you to explore a relationship with Jesus. Open your heart to him, and he will meet you right where you are. Thank you for engaging with my journey. If you wish to share your thoughts or request prayer, please leave your name in the comments below. Also, if you're interested in more stories like mine, please watch the videos displayed. Each one bears witness to the transformative power of faith, grace, and God's everlasting love.